Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help ambitious private practitioners across the globe to brand themselves and grow their dream practices. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building ninja tips. Visit privatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our signature marketing e-course. Here are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hey, Startup Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the Up Close and Personal podcast series. We have loved doing this series, and this is our third round and our final guest. So we're saving the best for last, but everybody's been awesome. So before I tell you guys who today's guest is, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank, if you're landing on our podcast for the first time, awesome. We're really excited that you guys are here, and what a great series to land on. And we hope that you stay part of our Startup Nation family forever. And as any good family has it, we love to give you gifts. So head on over to privatepracticestartup.com, slide on over to the resources tab, on the right. And there's gifts there, but I'm going to recommend to you to grab our free HIPAA form. It is attorney approved and completely customizable. Love it or not. We're therapists. We got to do paperwork. Might as well grab our HIPAA form for free. So before I do announce who today's guest is, we hope that you guys joined us yesterday as we talked with Chris Swenson. Many of you know him as the private practice warrior. And Chris shared a lot about his trials and tribulations growing up, but ultimately how they helped him become and have a warrior mindset. And he talks a lot about that. So interesting guy, interesting information. You'll definitely want to check that out if you have not before. So our guest today is not new to our podcast, and we were having a ton of fun and laughs before we hit record and thought, man, we should hit record. This is good up close and personal stuff. So our guest today
please.
Our guest today is Amber Lyda. Amber Lyda is a licensed psychologist and therapist advocate, promoting creative ways to provide service without self-sacrifice. She loves teaching therapists to build profitable online therapy practices or to turn passions into passive income generating projects. Welcome back, Amber. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Amber's laughing because as I went to introduce her, she disappeared, and I told her this is a podcast, not a magic show. But she's actually back, and hopefully Zoom will cooperate, or the technologies that be. But yeah, Amber's been on our podcast before, and it's really great to have you back. Before we got started, I mean, usually we just start like with the story of your life, but we were talking about moose and fairy lights and all these fun things and a camper. So why don't we just start there and then we'll go backwards?
Okay, that sounds good. So the most recent adventure that I've taken was with my husband. We went to Montana. So we drove from southwest Florida to west Montana, like just about as far as you can get. So it was a great drive. You know, we've only been married for 3 years. So this was a true test of our marriage, I think, that we passed. So that was cool. Like nobody died. The dogs survived. We survived. But while we were out there, we really had like a wildlife checklist in our heads of all the wildlife that we wanted to see. And we're like, check bald eagle, check there's an elk, check, but we weren't seeing a moose. And we're driving along this river and we're looking at, and my husband's like, oh, look, there's somebody like in the river. And we're getting closer and closer. I'm like, no, that's not. He's like, it's an inner tube. It's a fisherman in an inner tube. I'm like, I don't know. He's got paddles. I think it's like a rowboat. And then we get closer and we see it's neither of those things. It's a moose with very large, whatever those things are, horns, antlers, whatever the things are on top of their head, just swimming through. So we pull over. And my husband says to me, and in retrospect, this is kind of strange. He's like, why don't you go ahead and check it out? Take your phone. I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, running along the side of the road to go check the moose out who's swimming across. It's very steep. There's nowhere for him to go. Like he's clearly going to turn around and go back the way that he came. But he did not. And he started coming up on the shore. And I'm like, I feel like now he's definitely going to turn around and go back, but he did not. And apparently they can be quite aggressive towards humans, which I was not aware of until he started running towards us, or me rather. And I had my cell phone still on, but I was hauling butt along the side of the road back to the truck trying to hide. And I made it, and the poor little guy jumped over the road, got away, and ran into the forest. So all was well. But that was early on in the trip. So I felt like, we have already accomplished the goal. Like, we have had the adventure. Now, like, we can just totally chill out.
Yes. You had a near-death experience, almost killed by a moose on your adventure. I remember seeing the video that you posted on Facebook, and I was just in hysterics. It was a little bit of like the Blair Witch Project, with you running and the videos going everywhere, and all of a sudden the moose is coming at you, and then you safely made it into the car. It was quite
hilarious.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was very funny.
I'm so going to check that video out. That is hysterical. So what state was that in?
We were in Montana at that time, and there was somebody else who had pulled along the side of the road. And so it was kind of harrowing, not just the moose, but on the left side of the road, there were semis like going by very quickly. And on the right side was this steep embankment that led down to the river. I had not fully put on my tennis shoes when I got out. I just kind of slid my feet into them. So I'm running as best I can, and I'm like, don't die on three sides, don't die. And then in front of me, somebody else had pulled over, and he's like, he's gaining on you. I'm going as fast as I can.
That is so funny. So I guess before your trip, you didn't read that book, like, I forget what it's called, but like What to Do If, or something like that, if a moose is chasing you. But now you know.
No, but I did afterwards. I was on the internet right away. Like, all right, what other dangers do I need to be prepared for out here?
That is too funny. So I'm sure people are curious probably about two things. Like, one, wow, like you hopped in a vehicle and drove from Florida all the way to Montana. So people are probably really curious about, A, what does your husband do for work? And B, how did you guys take this adventure? How long it was? And did you work? Did you not work? What was that like?
Oh my gosh. So we both work online. He's a lawyer and I'm a psychologist. And so part of my work is that I do therapy, which I love, and I love that it's portable. And then the other side of my work is that I teach other people how to build online therapy practices. So, just pick up the laptop and go and get to travel wherever. So as long as there's internet, then we're good to go.
And how was the internet throughout your journey?
Pretty good. There was one cabin that I called ahead, and I was like, so how's the internet? And his reaction was, it's shit. I was like, okay, all right. So we can't stay there very long, but I can really work my schedule so that I can see clients in 2 days. I keep a very small caseload, and then the rest of the week, work whenever there's a good signal.
Well, that's awesome. And what kind of law does your husband practice?
He is a defense attorney, and he's an appellate lawyer. So he works appeals. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And he writes books as well.
Very cool. So is he in court then much, I would assume?
No, because he does mostly like just writing. It's a lot of reviewing and writing. Yeah.
Got it. Well, interesting. Well, let's take a step back now. And actually, before we do that, let's just take a quick moment to thank our sponsor.
When you're in private practice, it can be tough to find the time to review your marketing efforts, let alone make improvements when they're needed. Whether you're a seasoned clinician whose current website needs to be revamped, or a new therapist building a website for the first time, Brighter Vision is here to help. By understanding your business and what makes it unique, Brighter Vision's team of designers then uses this information to create a custom website catered to your specific marketing goals. Better yet, every website includes professional search engine optimization to make sure you get found in online searches, as well as unlimited technical support so your website can change and grow along with your practice. The best news of all, listeners of the Private Practice Startup Podcast get $100 off any new website. To get started, head on over to brightervision.com/PPS. Again, that's brightervision.com/PPS.
If you've ever felt lost trying to find great people for your business, you need to try Wise Hire. They're an online recruiting system that makes the hard parts of hiring, like making ads, posting to job boards, and tracking candidates, fast and easy. Plus, they're super affordable. We love that their DISC personality assessment helps you find exactly who you're looking for. We know it's tough to juggle all you do, and hiring the right way can be a full-time job. With Wise Hire, it feels like someone's with you, supporting you every step of the way. Their team lives and breathes their mission of both helping you hire and helping teams create fulfilling careers and happy lives. And that's something we really believe in. Right now, they're offering a free strategy session to the private practice startup listeners. If you're thinking about growing your practice, you got to get on this call. They are the experts on building amazing teams from the ground up. Start hiring or book your free strategy session today at wisehire.com/PPS. That's wisehire, WIZEHIRE.com/PPS.
Let's take a step back in time, Amber, and kind of go back to when you were born and where did you live, and tell us about your family makeup and what was life like for you.
So I grew up in Florida. I'm a Florida native, born and raised, generations of Florida natives. And I grew up in a town called Fort Pierce, which is a really kind of interesting town. It's small, and it's sort of strangely, at least when I was growing up there, divided into like straight up agriculture or not. Those are the two options, and my feeling, and I hate to say this because people from my hometown are going to hear me, but I just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. So, I fast tracked getting out of there by doing like dual enrollment in high school and getting into college as quickly as I could. A lot of my peers were coming behind me because I was just like, let me get to a new place. And now that I'm older and have lived away for a while, I can go back and really appreciate the strengths. But I really didn't feel like I fit in there and always felt like different. I always kind of hung around with the cool kids. Like I could kind of fit into any group, but I never felt like I fit in to the group. I never felt like I had a soul connection when I was there. It wasn't until I left that I felt like I was really connecting with people who were more like-minded.
Interesting. What made you not feel like you fit in?
Boy, we're just going to go deep real fast. The values there were very conservative, and I have a really strong value around critical thinking and genuine kindness. And so my town was very Southern. It was like Southern and coastal. And so, if you're from the South, there's kindness, and then there's like genuine kindness. So you don't know. I had a boyfriend at one point that my parents just detested, but he never got it because he wasn't from the South and he didn't understand the fake kindness that we do sometimes of like, oh, bless your heart.
Oh,
but
yeah.
We're not really saying bless your heart. We're saying something different. So, that part didn't really resonate for me. The really conservative piece didn't really resonate for me. In small towns, there's a lot of everybody knowing your business, and I didn't really like that either. I felt like I wanted to be able to explore without feeling that people were going to judge me for that exploration. So I felt like a little bit of a square peg in a round hole, and felt much more myself by the time I got into graduate school and had more time out in the world.
Gotcha. And where did you go to grad school?
I went to undergrad at University of Florida, which felt like so far away from home at the time. It's like a 3-hour drive, and I felt like I was, on the moon. And then I went to Nova Southeastern for my graduate degree, and then went to University of Virginia for internship, Virginia Commonwealth for postdoc, and then I worked in North Carolina for 5 years before I came back to Florida.
Wow. And where in North Carolina?
Boone, North Carolina at Appalachian State. Oh, I loved it there. I don't love cold weather, but I was really I crave novelty and I like new experiences. Probably another reason why my hometown wasn't a great fit for me. I like new things. I like to see different stuff. And so Boone was like, wow, it gets cold and there's snow and, it just felt totally different.
Very cool. And Amber, do you have any siblings?
Nope. I am an only kiddo, although all the dogs in my family were pretty much raised as my siblings, so they're super spoiled.
You run with a pack.
Yeah. But it is kind of interesting being an only child. I always wanted siblings, but my parents were not having it. They're like, yeah, we're one and done. It's you, and that's only going to be you. But you have, at least for me, I ended up really connecting with older people. So like it feels like me and my parents are a tribe in and of ourselves. Like we're very, very close. We feel more peer-like than I think a lot of kids feel with their parents. And that's carried on throughout my whole life. Like I've always gravitated more towards like whoever the authority figure is and connected more at a peer level with them than my actual peers, which has served me well in a lot of ways. But can also be annoying for my peer groups. Like you're always like, the teacher's pet and the boss's favorite doesn't always serve you well in your social circle.
And how would your parents describe you as a kid?
Oh my gosh, a go-getter for sure. I always jump before I'm really ready. So if I'm interested in a thing, I'm just going to jump for it and, I'll like figure it out on the way or not. It'll be fine. So definitely a go-getter. Both of my parents are on the anxious side of the spectrum, and I definitely got some of that from them, but I'm not as anxious as they are. So I think that they see me as very adventurous, even though probably like per normal population, I'm pretty average. So they would say that I was adventurous. They would say that I'm a people pleaser. I've been working really, really hard on that. Yeah. And I think that for a long time, people saw me as naive because I would see opportunities and be like, for sure, we can do that. Let's go do it. And I think that like eventually I made so many of those things actually happen that they let go of that. And, now it would be more like spunky, like, oh, okay, Amber's going to do it. She's spunky. She's going to find a way to make that happen. But it was so frustrating too. Like for a long time for people to be like, oh, you're so cute. That's like such a cute little dream that you have, no, it's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I almost think like as entrepreneurs, you almost have to have that because if you kind of extinguish your own dreams, like you just wouldn't go after it. And then when you get in the middle of it, you're like, oh, what did I do? This is a lot of work or whatever. But you're in it and you're like, I'm going to figure this out one way or another, or I'm just going to let it go and that's okay. And I can go in a different direction. And I know that's like one of the things I love about entrepreneurship. What about you? What do you really love about entrepreneurship?
Definitely that. I think so. One of the things that kind of, I think, shaped me growing up is when I was very, very little, I had a pituitary gland issue. Like something was happening in my brain. My pituitary wasn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. And I went through a long period of time where I wasn't growing. So I was much smaller than all of my peers. And like a year and a half when you're little is a huge gap. Yeah. So I was like a foot shorter than everybody in kindergarten and, all the way through like 6th grade. I think it was probably high school before I started to catch up. So like the nickname that I got was like micro or mini, and people treated me like I was a baby. I remember like vividly being on the playground as a kindergartner and they would pick me up and carry me around like we were playing house. I was not playing house. I did not like that role at all. And so I had to learn. My mom did such a great job with this, like to use my words to gain like my status back because physically I was just too small to be able to, I literally couldn't get out of their grasp. I was very small. So she taught me like you can still overcome that kind of thing. You just have to find the words to even out that playing field. You can use your words to find power. And that really gave me a lot of confidence because it worked. I could twist things or use big words so that people felt like, oh, maybe she's got a little bit more power than we realize. Maybe she's older than she looks. And I feel like that definitely has followed into my entrepreneurial journey where I feel like, I feel behind a lot. Like I watch you guys and I watch other, famous entrepreneurs and I'm like, man, how are they doing all this? And I'm paying right now to be in a pretty hefty mastermind, and all of them have a lot more education than I have about business, and they have a lot more experience. And sometimes I'm listening and I'm like, man, I don't know even what they're talking about. I'm so far behind. But that little me who was like, that's okay. You can be the underdog and you'll figure it out. Like, you can get the resources, you can do this. I think it's just really paid off growing up. And it's a big part of what I like about being an entrepreneur is you can just jump and you'll figure it out.
Nice. I love that. And does your underdog have its own like persona or name?
Ooh, I've never thought about that. I've never thought about that, but it shows up even when a computer, you know how your computer tries to like beat you sometimes and just won't do what you want it to do?
Like when it kicked you off of Zoom?
Right. Well, that's so funny. So I actually said, oh no, you are not going to win. I'm going to win. So that's like how it comes out for me a lot of like, oh no. Or I'm going to figure this shit out.
I love Laura Long has her bitchy Brenda, and it's the critic, the inner critic. And she actually what does she say? Like bitchy Brenda has a smoke and she's like, you can't do that. No one's going to like you. Like she really personifies it. So hysterical.
That's my like week 3 of my cycle. That's when that little mean ass person shows up. Like, why did you think in week 2 that you could do all the things? You can't do all the things. You need to rest.
Well, I'll be very curious if this little you, the mini me, whatever the underdog develops a persona. Before we continue, I just want to take a quick break for our next sponsor. Tired of never quite feeling comfortable with your practice financials? I'd like you to meet Green Oak Accounting. Their goal is to empower private practice owners with the financial information they need to make good business decisions. They specialize in working with solo and group private practices in the mental health industry, so they're uniquely positioned to help with figuring out what's normal in your business finances and what's not. So if you've ever had a conversation with your accountant or bookkeeper that left you wishing that they understood private practice or had some best practices to share, head on over to greenoakaccounting.com and schedule a free consultation to see if they might be a good fit for you. They can help you with all your accounting needs, from bookkeeping to payroll to profit first and budgeting, as well as forecasting. Also, check out their new podcast, Therapy for Your Money, where Julie Harris talks about all things money, finance for private practice. Man, Amber, we are really enjoying this conversation with you and just kind of getting an insight into your world. And so I know that you talked about, one of the things that shaped you as a kid. What shaped you wanting to become a psychologist?
Wow. I knew that I wanted to be a psychologist really early. I was like 15 and we were having conversations in classes about, what do you want to do? And I don't know that I even understood exactly what a psychologist did, but I had 2 things. I was either going to be a psychologist or a marine biologist. Again, I don't think I really understood what those jobs were, but they sounded good. And I applied for a marine biology summer internship program in Brazil and did not get it. But I needed to work that summer because, money. And so I ended up getting a job at a hospital. And I was like 17 at the time, and it was an inpatient unit. And I was just a little minion tech running around doing the 15-minute checks to make sure everybody's still alive and well. And they had a DID clinic attached to it. So I got to work in the crisis stabilization unit and in an inpatient dissociative identity disorder, it's called MPD back then, clinic. And it was like day 2, and I knew this is it. Like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. This is amazing. I freaking love it. I actually, speaking of the small person syndrome, I was in the back office reading the files of the patients in the DID clinic because in my brain, I was like, I'm preparing so I know what the hell I'm walking into. And because I looked so young, one of the patients saw me and thought that I was a nurse's kid, just scrolling through their clinical file, and got really upset, understandably, and started throwing things at me. And, the big hospital files are really big and heavy, and she's throwing them at me. And I remember the moment of feeling like, I totally get why she would be doing this. Like, I don't remember feeling afraid. I don't remember feeling anything other than like empathy of, oh no, I totally understand where you're coming from. And It just totally solidified, like, this is my jam. This is what I'm going to be doing. And since that time, since I was 17, so a bajillion years ago, I've been working in mental health.
So that was like super heavy duty. And I know a lot of us had started off like with heavy duty populations or, mental disorders and things like that. And where did your career kind of go from then?
I bebopped all over. I worked in residential homes for people with schizophrenia. I worked in group homes for kids. I did in-home treatment, but the kind of heart of all of it came back to trauma. So complex trauma work is just my sweet spot. Like, that's the place that I feel most in my flow state. And so that's been my specialty since the get-go, that's been the place that my heart is feeling most full and most, in the zone. When you're in session with a client and you're just like in that spot where the whole rest of the world disappears and the two of you are just totally in sync, that's my jam. When I left my university job to work in a private practice, I was really nervous about doing complex trauma work online, partly just because there's only so much load you can carry as a single person without a team. But what really cool thing happened is that a lot of my former clients who I had done all of this trauma groundwork with found me. And so my caseload now is a lot of my former clients who were still doing complex trauma work, but all the really hardcore foundation was already there. So I feel much more able to manage that kind of stuff in my private practice online than I would have if we were starting at the very beginning of treatment.
Gotcha. And one of the cool things about you is that, Kate, you sounded like you wanted to ask a question.
It's okay. Go ahead.
So one of the cool things about you, Amber, is like before COVID and the pandemic is you were really one of the first therapists to move your practice completely online. What made you decide to do that, and share with us a little bit about that? And then how did you transition into helping other therapists do that?
I sort of had like a little life apocalypse happening a few years before I left the university. And I'm sort of a rule follower, so I knew I wanted to do therapy, so I just followed the traditional path that you're supposed to do. Like, it never occurred to me that there might be other ways to pursue this. And I was in university counseling centers, which I had loved. But at that point, the workload was getting so heavy, and I had moved up in administration, and so it wasn't as fulfilling. Like, I felt like I made 1,800 Excel spreadsheets that never even got used for anything, but we had to make them, and we had to have 1,800 meetings a week, and just felt like wheels spinning, and I didn't feel like purpose and meaning. And I was driving on I-95 2 hours every single day. I just had it. And I had been thinking about doing online therapy for over 10 years. I had been thinking about it when I was at App State. Actually, the team at iTherapy, Carol Pulley, is somebody who worked at a counseling center with me, and she had talked to me about it a long, long time ago. So the seed had been planted. And I thought, like, the life apocalypse happened, and I was like, you know what? I am not going to continue to wait to live my best life. Like, I thought that I was putting in my time to live the best life. The apocalypse happened. That all blew up. So forget it. Like, I'm going to make this happen. And I didn't know if I was going to do online therapy or some other online business or teach online, but I knew that I was going to work online because I wanted to be portable and be able to explore the world. And the online practice just took off. So I was like, well, let me try what I actually know how to do. Let's start with therapy. And when that started going really well, I'd started a Facebook group, really just as a repository for the stuff that I was learning. And I figured, like, maybe other people are doing this and we could help each other out. And because I had been doing it a little bit longer than most other people, it ended up being mostly me teaching. And that's what led into the side hustle of teaching other people to be able to build a practice online.
I was curious about, speaking of juggling, you have two companies, right? You have your private practice where you're helping your clients, and then you also have what you referred to as the side hustle of being able to help therapists to build online practices. And I'm just curious about what that juggling act is like for you and what a typical schedule looks like, because I know that you're someone who really values the work-life balance and the lifestyle piece. So I just wanted to hear you speak to that.
Yeah, I'm in a constant struggle against, like, my nature is to be a workaholic. Like, I really, really, really love the work that I do, but sometimes it slides from excitement into compulsion. And then it's just harder, even though I love going to the beach or, hiking. There's an inertia in my work chair, and I can sit here all day long if I don't make myself do something different. So I'm constantly working at trying to manage that. The way that I'm managing it right now, and I change it up like every quarter. I'm like, okay, what's the new way that I'm going to manage this? But the way that I manage it right now is I have 2 clinical days a week, and I see all my clients on those days. And that helps me kind of stay in the clinical mindset. I'm not good at switching back and forth. And then I have 2 days a week that are just on the business days where I'm working more on, I'm either doing coaching sessions or I'm doing content building or, getting ready. I'm in a launch right now. So working on launch stuff for my course. And then I usually keep one day, like Friday is totally open. And that's my shit that's not on the to-do list, but would be super fun to-do day. And it might end up that I go fishing. But sometimes if we don't go fishing, then I get to do kind of the playful stuff in the business. Like I love working in Canva and making pretty graphics. And that's really not the best use of my time. But on Friday, if I'm like, whatever, I've done all my other work, then I can do that kind of stuff or, make lists of podcasts that I might make in the future, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Nice. And what are some of your kind of maybe either rituals, whether it's things that you do before a launch, during a launch, and then like how do you celebrate when it's complete?
I've started doing morning pages every single morning, just writing free flow for 3 pages and my new little cool iPad with my little iPad pencil. That's a write-off. And that really helps just to get all of the crap out of my head that would otherwise just be floating back there. And it's not like these are some deep journal entries, they're just whatever's in. It's almost like sweeping out your mind. It just gets all of the stuff out. And then I do something that I have called an endless possibilities page, where I just write down, like, what are all the things I could possibly do today? And it might be work stuff, but I also try to make myself think of like weird stuff. Like I could cancel all of my work today and I could go to the Naples Botanical Garden, like just to try to challenge my brain to think of like, listen, you do have lots of options. It's not just doing these 6 things related to, let's say, the launch. You have choices. And then I just go back and circle, like, what's absolutely necessary? There should only be 2 things on the absolutely necessary list. And what's the one thing that would make you feel like today was a success? And then I circle that one and I just try to do those 3 things.
I love that. I love that idea. And, we also interviewed Jessica Tapana and, Jessica was talking about, Kate and I talk a lot about brand values in your business. And she was just talking about values overall and helping her decide like what's next. Like, okay, this is my value for the day and this is really important and it's family. So, okay, I'm going to put this down and I'm going to go do this. But I love the endless possibilities. I did an exercise before, 365 ways to make money. We were like literally driving down the street and like whatever I saw, I was like, palm tree. How can you make money out of a palm tree? Oh, a road. And it's just like, I love that idea of just engaging the mind and just imagining. It's interesting. I'm reading this book called The Psychic Pathway that Carrie Nola had recommended. And it talks about imagination really is the connection to our psychic abilities, right? And so I love that you're exercising that. And it sounds like some cool ideas kind of come out of that. Share with us one of the endless possibilities maybe that you've done that was kind of surprising to you and it was just like really like fun or joyful.
Well, like it's so easy to get stuck into ruts and routine, at least for me, very easy to get stuck into ruts and routines. And so, and this isn't like some crazy, amazing thing, but I was just like, we live literally blocks from the beach. We could fill up our little thermos with some good wine and we could bike out to the beach and we could listen to our, we have a little playlist that we had for our road trip. We could listen to our road trip playlist and maybe we'll go swim. And it was a Wednesday at, 12:30. So that's not a typical, let's have wine on the beach at 12:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, but it felt really cool to be like, that's a thing that we could do. Yeah, let's do that. Let's ride our bikes with our little thermos of wine.
Nice. So tell me your favorite song on your road trip playlist or one of them.
Jeez. It's embarrassing because it sounds so Pollyanna-ish, but there's a song that goes, this is going to be the best day of your life. And I just freaking love that song. Every time I hear it, I'm like, yeah, it is going to be the best day of my life. Let's do it.
I love it. And it sounds like you might be a good singer too. I don't know.
No, no.
No, that was really good, Amber.
I sing a lot, but I don't sing well ever.
Well, that was pretty good. So I know I'm curious. I'm sure other people are curious too about we've been talking about a lot of positive things and cool things, but we know in life and in business that it's not always like that. And how do you deal with fear and self-doubt?
Medication. I do have I have pretty bad anxiety. And I've had anxiety since I was a little kid. Because both my parents also have anxiety, they didn't recognize it as anxiety. And I think actually, and I've said this to them recently, I think that they kind of liked that I was anxious because I would worry about things and then they wouldn't feel like they had to. So it was not good. Like here's an example. When I was in kindergarten, we learned about fire safety. And I took this lesson very, very seriously. And I had previously been sleeping in my parents' bed we had been broken into a lot. So I was sleeping in my parents' bed and I learned about fire safety and I was like, oh no, we cannot be doing this anymore. And so in our 1-story house, I demanded that we had a roll-out ladder from my bedroom window and a window break thing. And I kept scissors next to my bed so that if I needed to cut the screen out in case of a fire, I could do that. And then I insisted that we sleep with the door closed so that I could put my hand on the door to see if it was hot, to know if we could get out. I made code words in case I got kidnapped. I mean, it was like it was not good. But I think that it probably made them feel a little less anxious because they knew that I was worrying about all the things. So yeah, so anxiety it's been a real challenge. And probably, I think maybe 3-4 years ago, I started taking Lexapro for anxiety. And I had done all the yoga. I had done all the meditation. I had done like all the stuff you're supposed to do. And it really felt like, okay, I could do all of this for 5 hours a day and tamp it down a little bit, but I'm still anxious. So Lexapro has literally changed my life. Like, my psychiatrist was so kind. He's like, you're still going to be you. Cause I was really, I didn't want to not be myself. He's like, you're still going to be you. You're still going to have your worried thoughts, but instead of it spiraling, what's going to happen is you're going to have the worried thought. And then you're going to be like, screw that. And you're going to move on. And that's exactly what happened. Like, the worried thoughts will still come up, but my brain doesn't attach weight to them the way that it used to, where it would just send me spinning for an hour or 2 days, worried about something stupid. Like, did I say something that hurt so-and-so's feelings 3 days ago when we chatted on the phone? Did I end the call too quickly and abruptly? It was really, looking back, and when you're in it, you don't know how bad it is. When you're out of it and you look back, it just makes me so sad for my little self. Like, oh my gosh, I wish you could have gotten help sooner, because it was debilitating in so many ways that I didn't realize.
Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that. And like when you had said medication and you laughed, I wasn't sure if it was like that thing, but I appreciate you sharing this, because here you are and here we are, mental health professionals. And, I think there's, number one, you're being vulnerable about some of your own struggles, and also utilizing medication and how it's helped, and how I'm sure as many mental health professionals is we might struggle with that anyway, even though, we're suggesting that to clients, but it's like, well, what does that mean about me? And it means nothing. It's like, wow, great. You're just helping yourself. And you're right. Like, when we are out of it and then we can look back, there's contrast, and it's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize how bad that was. And, here I am on the other side. And, just goes to show that sometimes all the other things that we do, sometimes, medication or other things are definitely important to each individual. Yeah. So appreciate you sharing that as a mental health professional. And it's almost kind of like giving people permission, like it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really wasn't pro medicine before that. I was not, I would recommend it, but I wasn't somebody who was like, yeah, I want to do that. And then I read a study that really changed things for me. And it talked about how anxiety and depression, the chemicals that are created in your brain from anxiety and depression, are actually doing damage to your brain. And they're creating pockmarks and lesions in your brain. And if you take the right medication for you, at least for some people, those lesions heal. And if you don't, even if you come out on the other side of the depression, the lesions remain. And I was like, okay, that's it for me. Sign me up. I'm going to try this out. And it took a while to find the right medication. But when we did, it was just a world of difference.
Wow. Interesting. Very
Yeah.
cool. So I know that
I know. I know Katie had already kind of acknowledged, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us. I think it's something that a lot of people will resonate with. I was curious to go back a little bit in terms of your relationship with your husband. You had mentioned earlier that you all have only been married for 3 years. So I'm curious how you met and tell us a little bit about your relationship.
Oh, he's so private. He's going to hate me sharing this, but I'll do it carefully. We actually met on Match.com, and I was the pursuer. So I think had he read my profile, this was pre-medication, he would have not picked me because it was the longest, wordiest, anxiety-driven profile. I wish I had a copy of it still. I even had a friend read through it, and he's like, yeah, I don't think you should say some of this. However, as I was scrolling through Match, I came across his profile, and I immediately, because I'm a dork, went to what books is he reading? And he was reading a book that I had just read and that I was loving. I don't remember what it is now, but I was like, oh my gosh. So I messaged this guy with like the dorkiest intro ever. I'm like, oh, I see that you're reading this book. Like, what do you think? I'm reading it too. And that's how it began. And we just communicated back and forth for quite a while before I would actually get out of my house and meet him because, anxiety. But the very first date that we had, we went to a Bill Maher comedy, one of his shows where he gets up and talks, and it was freaking hilarious. And we laughed our heads off, and we've been laughing ever since. It's really like the best part of our relationship is we just laugh a lot.
That's awesome. I have a question about Match. I'm just curious, did you ever have clients contact you or like, did you ever see, or did you ever get matched with your clients? No,
thank God. But I did see my ex on there lying about his age, and I was like,
Really? That is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah, well, good that you're my ex.
And Amber, how do you and your husband support each other, both being entrepreneurs, just kind of through the journeys of really life and ups and downs of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, we have a really strong value, both of us, around having each other's backs. And I feel like it goes deep. Like, I'm going to have your back no matter what. It goes really deep. And when I first started talking to him about leaving my job and doing the online practice, I'd already begun when working part-time online when I was still at my job. And I remember him saying to me, I've got you. Give it a try. What is there to lose? I've got your back. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You'll do something different. And it was the only thing I needed to hear. It was just exactly what I needed because I was so close to taking the leap. And that freed me up a lot. And I think, the same is true with me for him. Whatever comes up, I'm going to have his back and he's going to have mine. And that's just the deepest part of a relationship I can imagine. And then on top of that, to laugh all the time is just another fun benefit. I'm cackling a little bit because he sometimes hides things that look like phallic objects on my desk. And so I just had that heart sinking moment of oh my God, please don't let there be something on my desk right now. Okay, there's not good.
That is funny. So this is a little joke he plays on you, or you guys do this to each other?
Well, he started it, but now I have to do it too. But that, I never know what it's going to be. We have this thing that you muddle your fruit with for fancy drinks. And so that has frequently shown up on my desk in the background. And I'm trying to get to it before a client sees it. Or if I've seen the client for a long time, I might just confess what's going on.
That is hysterical. That reminds me of us a little bit because when you get mad at your spouse or something like that, I'll say, I'm going to poop on your pillow like an animal, right? And so I went online on Amazon and I bought fake poop, right? And so put it on the pillow. And then it's we hide it in different places in the drawer and stuff like that. It's hysterical. Fun. Amber,
you learn something new every day.
I know. Look, Kate's learning things about me too. Oh, wow. Well, I think
it is hysterical.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, even though I'd love to go on and on, I think it might be time to switch over to our lightning round where we ask you some rapid fire questions and you just answer off the top of your head, whatever's there.
Okay.
And since you were talking about this muddler
All right,
thing,
you ready for this?
I guess.
Go ahead, Katie.
Oh, your mic's off.
Thanks. So since we were talking about this muddler thing, we were curious as what is your favorite fancy drink?
Ooh. Novelty. I just want to try a new one all the time. Like I just want to try something different. I just had one with absinthe in it this past week. That was so freaking good. It was just different flavors across your taste buds. I love it.
Interesting. Yeah, I know absinthe can be pretty tasting. So I'm sure they had a lot of other concoctions in there to balance that out.
That's right.
Okay. Here's my question. What was one of the funniest moments that you've had while providing a training to other professionals?
Oh, geez. There's been a lot of funny moments in my clinical sessions.
That can count. We can go there.
There have been times where clients have, because we're online and it feels very casual sometimes, started to take me to the bathroom with them. Like, I just need to go to the bathroom real quick. And then the laptop and they are walking out of the room and I'm like, wait. And I don't know. And they're like, oh, just turn off the volume. I'm like, no, still no. Big no.
That's funny.
Things like that. And actually, I did have a training and it was a big training. It was a big deal. And I was very nervous. And Paul had fixed me a fancy drink and, you know, I felt very loved and supported. And then right before I went to hit record, I turn around and the freaking muddler is right behind me. I'm like, okay. All right, now I don't feel anxious and just feel, okay, all right, I'll get you next time.
That's too funny. Amber, what's your favorite burrito?
Ooh, I really like mojo roast pork. So any burrito that has that in there is going to make me a happy camper.
What's your guilty pleasure?
We have an ice cream parlor like 3 blocks from here. And sometimes I don't tell that that's where I'm going. And I will get myself a couple scoops of their amazing Twixie ice cream. It's like smashed Twix with caramel. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's so good.
That does sound good. That mojo burrito with some Twixie ice cream.
That's right. And a fancy drink after.
Yummo. Do you have any escape fantasies? And if you were to escape, where would you want to go?
Yes, I do have escape fantasies. And I respond to pandemics and camping like an opportunity to plan for the apocalypse. So I also have like all the things if we need to get into a survival situation. And that probably would be my escape fantasy of like just getting super far away from everyone in a beautiful setting with no access to Wi-Fi or TV or any electronic distraction. Having a couple of really great books and a hammock and, you know, my closest peeps with me. That would be just a lovely escape.
Love it.
Tell us some of the survival stuff that you have compiled in preparation for the zombie apocalypse or whatever else is going to happen.
Oh my gosh, I don't know what happens to me. I was online looking just for food for the pandemic and toilet paper like a normal person does. And then all of a sudden I had an axe that breaks down into multiple pieces with like flint and a compass built in. I don't understand, but it's going camping with us. I have a portable potty situation with human-sized doggy bags so that and they biodegrade. There's a little powder you put in them, you dig a hole, and it's all good for nature. Naturally a hammock. Yeah, I just acquire weird shit that somehow I just go down a bunny hole. I have now, a really nice, like military grade breakdown shovel, all metal, screws together. There's a window breaker built in. The shovel itself has a measuring stick for 6 inches. So you know how deep you need to dig to bury your poo, because it needs to be 6 inches below ground, in case you did not know. One side is an axe, one side is a saw, and then there's a hex tool built into it as well. So I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
That was so interesting. And so I got to ask.
We've now talked about poop like 3 times. Sorry, we're talking at the same time.
I know, but I have to ask, like, did you know this stuff before, or then you bought it and you're like, I got to figure all this stuff out?
No, I learned of it down a YouTube rabbit hole of like, it started with what do you need for the pandemic, and then it slid into what do you need to survive the apocalypse, and the same with camping. Like, what do you need to camp? Oh, well, here's what you need if you're going to have to live out in the wild for the rest of your life. So we also have huge water containers now. I have an outdoor shower situation. I'm ready.
We see. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was awesome.
It's so funny. It reminds me a little bit. I can go down that rabbit hole as well. And one of the things that I had bought a couple years ago is this straw that you can use that changes salt water into drinkable fresh water. So it's like this survival straw contraption. It was really cool because I was thinking, gosh, if we have to be surviving off of the land, what are we going to do with all of the salt water here? We need to find normal drinking water. Yep. So I bought 4 of them, one for each of us in the family.
Could you send me a link to that? Because I'm going to need to have that.
This is too funny. I'm enjoying this way too much. Okay. Last and final, or second to the last, maybe. If you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Pizza for sure.
So this is really funny. We began the show with Amber disappearing, and now we're about just to close the show. And I asked Kate if she wanted to ask one final question, and poof, she disappeared. So Amber, this was a joy, a pleasure, hysterical. Kate's joining us back on as we close the show. And we so thank you for being part of one of our up close and personal guests. It was a joy and a pleasure really to get to know you on a deeper level. And you're a hoot. It's funny. We had a good time. And what a great way to end this 3rd series of Up Close and Personal. So Startup Nation.
Oh, thank you.
Kate's back. And we just want to say we hope you guys have enjoyed this 3rd series of Up Close and Personal. If you miss any of the other guests, go back ahead and listen to them. They're all great, and they really share a good insight to their lives. So as we stay here at the Startup Nation community and family, thank you for allowing us to inspire you guys from startup to mastery. Take care, everybody.
Thanks so much, Amber. That was so much fun. See you next time, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.